Welcome to Feelings Matter, brought to you by Feelalytics. I'm Michelle Stinson Ross.
And I'm Tina Schweiger.
And today we are discussing the last part of our mini series on emotional awareness and talking about what experiencing emotional awareness is like. We've got a lot to get through. So I'm ready to jump right in if you are, Tina.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. So to start off, how do we practice emotional awareness in ourselves? Like, what does that feel like? How do we practice it? What do you think, Tina?
Well, I think it might be helped to kind of look back about what we've talked about on the first two episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that top of mind right now? I know we've talked about different types of emotional awareness, how it's important, how it's related to emotional intelligence. Anything come to your mind to kind of get us back, like, or help people kind of loop into where we've been?
Sure. Well, for me, being a writer, being a communicator, our discussion of emotional literacy and being able to be aware enough of ourselves that we can put a word to what we're feeling is definitely top of mind for me. How do I describe that? How do I explore what I'm feeling by engaging in language is definitely top of mind to me.
Yeah, definitely. Um, Emotional awareness doesn't have a lot of writing about it as a specific topic. So, but I know that I could speak to, how I particularly practice emotional awareness
Mhm.
and how I think about just becoming more aware of our emotional states as they change and ebb and flow throughout the day or days. And time, like, so a pause. I think there's a nonprofit organization that we're good friends with called 6 Seconds, and
Mhm.
the name of their organization is indicative of the amount of time that it takes when you're in a situation and something is happening and maybe you're becoming dysregulated or you're not able to maybe you're becoming dysregulated or you're not able to really control what's going on, or you feel like you're just things are kind of like stress is happening or something is happening. Pausing for 6 seconds and just breathing can calm
Mhm.
your nervous system down a little bit. So when you're in that fight, flight, or freeze mode, it's almost impossible to like look at yourself from the outside in or to assess anything, because your brain is really just trying to be in survival mode. So that 6 second pause can help us just step back a little bit from that survival mode and become aware of what's happening in our own body and our own emotional state.
Mhm. Yeah, mindfulness practice that like let's just pause and pay attention. And the paying attention bit. So some of the things that I heard Brene Brown talking about, especially with the emotional literacy, is embodiment, understanding that emotions aren't just something that, are mental, but we feel our emotions throughout our body and understanding that that tightness in our chest could be, an experience of anxiety that um, the muscle cramps that we get in our necks and shoulders, that's ongoing stress. The butterflies that we get in our stomachs sometimes could be excitement or it could be nervousness. Either way, it's really interesting that when we start to pay attention to how our emotions play out in our bodies through, from the top of our head to the soles of our feet, that you really have to pay attention because there are certain emotions that feel the same way, even though they're opposite emotions.
It's true. If you are not even really wanting to like think about like, oh, what might I be feeling right now? Like you could at least pay attention to what your body is doing.
Mhm.
There's one statement that I've heard before. I don't know who to attribute it to, but it's that basically excitement and fear feel the same in the
Mhm.
body, meaning that your heart rate is elevated, you might be sweating a little bit, things are feeling amped up. But the
Mhm.
difference is that when you're in a state of fear, you're simply holding your breath, and when you're in a state of excitement, you're breathing. So
Mhm.
one way to even become if you can become aware of yourself holding your breath.
Right.
You might be stressed. It could be as simple as when you're at your desk, you've opened an email, and that email is maybe from somebody that triggers you, and you're like, oh crap, this situation, I don't want to read anything more about it. What do? You're like, and then you read it.
Mhm.
And that particular physical response is one way that you can be like, wow, let me just stop. Let me take that 6 seconds and let me let that breath go and actually start noticing how I'm feeling about that.
Right.
And then we can move from there.
Well, I also think about, we were discussing a lot about how people want more happiness in their lives, and is it that we want more happiness, or is it that we need to pay attention to those happy, joyful moments a bit more and actually tune into the fact that, oh, I'm enjoying this. This is good. Those sorts of things. So again, paying
Yeah.
attention to what your body is telling you, like those moments when you actually relax, when you can't stop smiling, like pay attention to your face so that you're aware of those moments when you're actually experiencing joy and happiness.
We're just trained to assume that happiness is something we get out externally. You
Mhm.
look at all of the advertisements that, yours truly may we have maybe
Sure.
been guilty of putting in your face at times. Um, but it's not coming from outside. These external situations can cause an emotion within us, but that emotion is truly within us. So the more that you can pay attention to what does your body feel like? You may know when you're stressed because you're holding your breath, but positive feelings are a bit more nuanced. They don't necessarily put you in a fight or flight state. So you have to, it's almost like a acquired taste, like a wine
Mhm.
or a coffee. And positive emotions and noticing them and distinguishing them and feeling them differently is an acquired skill. Very much like mindfulness and meditation. You just
Mhm.
practice it, you do it. So you can think of like, wow, I feel kind of happy right now. Does it make me want to move? Does it make me my stomach is a little jittery because I'm actually just a little excited too.
Mhm.
So how intense is it? How calm is it? Where is it hitting you in your body? And then what is it doing to your breath? And what is it doing to your movement? And then where does it feel good? Because when you're
Mhm.
happy, you just know it. You know it when you're happy. But really, where in your body does that happiness live? Where does yours
Certainly.
live, Michelle?
Honestly, I wanna say that one might be a full body experience for me. It's interesting that you said dancing, because that's that's what happens to me when I'm really enjoying myself. I wanna get up and move. I feel energized. So that's kind of like a full body thing, that my energy levels come up. My posture changes. I readjust my, in talking about it, I realized I just readjusted myself in my seat. So when I'm energized and I'm happy, my posture changes. I tend to straighten up. I'm not like curling in on myself. I tend to open up. So the more you feel yourself opening your body up, that's a good sign.
Yeah, it is. Um, since there isn't a lot of research in emotional awareness, there is a lot, but it's not like, say as much as other areas, for example.
Mhm.
Not to diminish it like there isn't anything. Um, but one of the things that I was looking at just in doing a bit of research is, well, if emotional awareness is a skill and it's a skill like creating mindfulness, how could you parallel those things? So I found a nice articles about mindfulness and how the different parts of mindfulness and how you can build those skills. We can put a link to that article in the show notes. Hayes and
Mhm.
Plum from it, 2007, and it identifies the mindfulness as the ability to have a state of acceptance of situations, something called cognitive diffusion. What that means is that there's a set of techniques that are in the moment that you can change the way that you relate to your own thoughts in the moment. It's a very complex kind of concept, but think about that for a minute and then
Mhm.
think about how you're thinking about it. And then you've got to cognitive diffusion. Um,
Okay.
There's contact with the present moment. So are you daydreaming and watching TV and not knowing even what's going on around you? Or do you hear the subtle hum of the fan and see the blowing of the trees outside the window, for example? Are you aware of what's happening in the moment? And then the other was self as context, which is the ability to recognize that you yourself are different from the thoughts that are swirling inside your head. So I took those constructs and paralleled them to emotional awareness, and they do parallel really well. So I think the theory that this is a skill we can all build is something that has a lot of credibility to it already. We can practice an acceptance without judging of the emotions that we're feeling in the moment. So if I am feeling stressed, I can be like, you know what? I'm feeling stressed, or like, I'm nervous. There might be people watching us right now. Oh my gosh, I'm nervous. I'm not going to judge that, say, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, or this isn't how a person and sitting here should be feeling. I'm not going to judge that. I'm accepting how I'm feeling without judging it. So it's very parallel with mindfulness. The cognitive diffusion component, diffusion is regulating. You can regulate your emotions by changing the way that you relate to the experience of the emotion. So if you have a habit of judging yourself for getting nervous, for example, or stressed in certain situations, try thinking about the situation, your own experience differently. That's a way to do it. Present contact with the present moment. So being aware of your emotions in the state as they're happening. You can practice that. And then self as context. So can you describe your emotional experiences independent of you, rather than, because a lot of people would say, like, how are you doing? I am happy. Does that mean you are the emotion happy? Or which is quite different than, oh, I feel happy, man, this is great. So thinking about the distinguishment between over identifying with your emotions, be they positive or negative, that ability to know that you are a human, you are experiencing these emotions, that these emotions are not you. They're something that you're experiencing, and making that separation is another way to think about it that can be helpful.
Oh, that's fascinating. Again, language. It's so interesting how language drives how we think. So as we begin to start paying attention to how we experience, we're aware of our own emotions, how does that then translate? What skills do we need to develop to be more emotionally aware of the people around us?
Man, acceptance. So we went through the constructs, but then how do you actually develop the skills around those? So with that, so a mindset or of non-judgment or acceptance is, I think, probably takes maybe years to perfect and to practice, and probably you never stop practicing acceptance. Um, I think that the moment that you're angry about something, or you find yourself having snarky, we can be habitually judgy, right?
Oh, yes,
Anybody?
absolutely.
Anybody?
I think we're socialized to be judgmental.
We are. Oh my gosh, we are. The moment you could stop yourself from even what may be the positive judgments that you're making. You may be like looking around, somebody's walking by, you're like, oh man, that person's outfit, like how, like, I really like that outfit, or how could they wear those shoes or whatever. You can notice in the moment that says, you know what, I'm judging that person's outfit. I'm going to just stop. And then you just stop. And then that's the practice. And it does take many years to do that. Your mind keeps tricking you.
Right. Well, as far as being present in the moment, so the more that we are present in the moments with other people, the more we can be aware of what they're expressing to us. Now, obviously, as we said in the first episode, we can't read each other's minds, but if we're present in the moment, and even on a video call, which Tina and I do this a lot, I can tell by Tina's facial expressions that there's something going on. Her brows are a little bit down. There's a little crinkle between her eyebrows. I'm like, Tina, how's it going today? Is everything okay with you? I get a sense that things might not be great today. How can I support you? So that's the
Yeah.
second part of it. It's like paying attention to the other person to see how are they holding their body? What's the expression on their face? What's their tone of voice? And when it seems to you as though, those nonverbal cues might be telling me either they're really, really happy and we need to tap into that and share that joy, or when it looks like they're struggling, we need to communicate and go, hey, I get the sense that, whatever. Is
Yeah.
that right? Is that what you're feeling?
Yeah, I think that noticing our own emotions also parallels to noticing the physical, like even if you're not even thinking about emotions, like just noticing people's body language or if they seem uncomfortable. We pick up on those things instinctually. It's just a matter if you're aware that you're picking up on them or not. And then how to address that is, empathy, right? That's the
Mhm,
practice of empathy. So to your point, pausing for that 6 seconds, the pause is critical. Going, hey, is everything okay? And then before you want to jump in and suggest what they may be experiencing, you may want to draw conclusions or fix or help. These are
mhm,
all natural desires. Hold yourself back for at least 6 seconds and leave the space empty for them to gather themselves for a minute, because they might be a little caught off guard that somebody has noticed that they're not doing that great today or something's up,
mhm.
and they might just need a minute to gather themselves before that they can respond with their own experience and what that is, rather than us layering something on top of what they're experiencing from our own perspective.
Yes, and being present and paying attention to not only ourselves, but those around us is the key to being able to do that. So let's get into something kinda complicated. Help us understand emotional complexity. What would the experience of multiple emotions or a blend of emotions actually feel like?
So it might feel confusing, right? Um, Emotional complexity, I think, I would call it like advanced emotional awareness.
Mhm.
Um, we've pointed out Brené's book a lot, and her research came up with, what is it, like happy, sad, mad, something like that,
Right,
the three.
right. She calls it the, sad, mad, glad triad.
Yeah, right. And like we had talked about before, those are the primary colors.
Mhm,
So, if you're a person who's normally living in the experience of the sad, mad, glad triad, then you're in that like red, yellow, blue color palette. You're kind of there, and it's sort of one or the other or the
mhm,
other, and it's black or white. And so I think that it's the practice is what's underneath that, and what, like, say it's a mad, just
mhm,
take one of those, and you're mad, uh, but could there be a tinge of jealousy? Could there be a bit of contempt? Uh, could you be judging at the same time?
mhm,
And when you can start kind of digging a little bit deeper underneath those broad stroke categories and getting curious, and maybe it's just having a list handy, which I'm gonna have that for you soon. Probably like September. All 144 emotions are coming out in a way that you can interact with them, play with them, sort them, organize them, learn about them, try to identify if you're feeling them, and get curious and say, hey, I'm in the general category of mad. Like, what, like 12 different emotions within mad are
mhm,
there? And could I be feeling any more of those? And some of those, they can unlock deeper awareness within yourself about your own history and what makes you tick as a unique and individual human. It's really cool. You
mhm.
can learn more about yourself.
So, I actually have an example from last night on this one. I got an opportunity to speak to a group of HR professionals. However, this speaking engagement was very different from my normal speaking engagements. Like things that I've done before, I've had 30 minutes to talk. This time I had 5 minutes. And I have to tell you, leading up to this, I felt nervous and worried and like, is this going to work? I'm not so sure. I had a lot of doubt in myself that I would be able to pull this off because it was not like anything I had ever done before.
Wow.
And I happened so the event was organized with one group of people and then like an intermission break and then another group of people. And I was in the second group of speakers. So I sat through like 5 of these 5-minute talks. I'm like, oh, wow, these people were really great. How am I going to follow that up? So there's this little bit of I was experiencing like joy and excitement because the speakers were really great and I loved what they were saying, but I was also experiencing some comparison where I'm like, oh my gosh, is my talk going to measure up to this because they were really really great? And I'm like, so again, I cycling through like excitement and enjoyment and I don't know about and a little bit of doubt and I'd work through the doubt and go, no, I can do this. This is going to be fine. Like I said, we had an intermission. I got a chance to get up and talk to some people and just kind of like bring my anxiety back down again. And then I had to wait backstage for a couple of minutes. They're 5 minutes, so they've got like three of us, one on stage and two waiting backstage. So you're listening to this, and again, the nerves, the butterflies, that feeling of I really want to give my best. I really want to make sure that the audience enjoys this, that I don't flop or flub up or any of that. So that feeling of responsibility to the audience in that moment starts to kick
Yeah.
in. And
I
then I
could
get
break
out.
that down, like even right
Yeah.
there, like you were experiencing all the the dimensions of emotional awareness. You just went through all of them. So you had a state awareness, meaning that you were confronting yourself with your changing emotions in the moment, right? You
Mm-hmm.
had event awareness, meaning that you were aware of the life event you were in the middle of that was causing this emotion to happen within you. You had complex sensing at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. You were like, oh gosh, I'm nervous, but I'm also excited. But, so there was this complexity. You were also physically aware of what was going on in your body. You were like, you were aware where you were physically. You were in the green
Mm-hmm.
room. You were getting ready. You knew where you were in physically space and time and how that impacted your emotions. And you experienced empathy because you're like, wow, I don't want to disappoint this whole crowd out there. And
Right.
I'm
Right.
really loving what these other people are doing. So all kind of like 5 dimensions of
Right.
emotional awareness. Good job.
Thank you. Well, here's the payoff of all of that. So my energy levels kept amping up and amping up. And when I stepped out on stage, I dove right in with both feet and absolutely started the talk with, so can we all admit that corporate culture is weird? And I immediately started getting laughs. So like for the first 2 minutes of talking, I had the entire room laughing. And man, that was the
Awesome.
best feeling, that to instantly walk out on stage and connect with the entire room was just like, okay, now I know I got this. I've got them right where I want them. So yeah, lots
Whew.
of
Oh,
emotional experiences in a very short amount of time.
and the bigger payoff for you as it relates to other humans is that you know how that feels to be nervous, to be feeling, I don't know, inadequate, maybe something. And you could,
Mhm,
if somebody else was in that situation and they were nearby you, you probably would recognize what they were going through because you yourself have been
mhm,
aware of your own experiences. And you may be like, hey, FYI, just take a breath. It's going to be fine.
mhm, mhm. Well, this is
Or
why so many people are terrified to get up in front of an audience and try public speaking because it can feel so scary. It is also why public speaking can trigger that sense of imposter syndrome in a lot of people where they're up in front of an audience, they feel that responsibility to do a good job, and yet there's something in the back of their head telling them you're not really good enough, you don't know enough, whatever the case may be. There's a little bit of negative self-talk back there telling them you really don't belong here, but you
Mhm.
do. And you need to be able to recognize that that's what's going on, that there's something in your own mind that's telling you you don't belong here, and be able to pause and go, wait a minute. Yes, I do. I was invited. This is a topic that I know well, all of those things, and be able to just like tell that inner critic that it can be quiet. We're safe here. This is okay. We're going to
If
do a
you
great job.
if you've been listening this long, you're going to get a really nice little treat here. I'm going to tell you this is kind of the secret to life, I think. You can choose your own thoughts. You can choose whether to have them or not, and you can choose what they are. And those choices impact how you feel. So you're more in control than you realize.
Mhm.
So choose good ones. I was talking with my studio manager just the other day, and she was telling me, she's like, I'm actively working on my self talk. I'm like, awesome. Tell me about that.
Mhm.
She's like, I just noticed that I tend to just like, I'm not giving myself these really big lectures anymore where I'm just telling myself about how bad I am and I'm no good. And like I've kind of healed a lot of that. But
Mhm.
what I find now is I have these little quips that come up, these little reactions, these little almost self judgments. And those
Mhm.
little self judgments then turn into to thoughts about ourselves. And she's like, I'm really working on just noticing those and replacing them with good thoughts about myself. And I'm
That's
like, yay,
amazing.
good
That's
job.
great. You know
Let's
what?
work
This is a great segue, because as we talk about being able to take that moment to pause and choose what we do next, I want to talk a little bit about how neurodivergence and trauma can impact how we experience emotions, and how they might get in the way of that ability to choose how we move forward.
Mhm. Those are 2 big things. I mean,
Those are
there's
very
a lot
big things.
there.
There Right. So let's talk a little bit about the neurodivergence
Yeah.
first.
So it just depends on what type, right?
Mhm.
Anyone that suffers from depression at all is going to be fighting. Sometimes, you and I have both experienced depression.
Mhm.
Most people do experience depression at some point in their lives, even if it's not a lifelong condition, there's certain situations that'll bring it on. So, sometimes that's just the day, right? But I would say that your inner voices are harder to redirect
Mhm.
because of all the chemistry that's involved with the different, maybe lack of certain neurotransmitters or an excess of other types, or maybe just the way that your brain is formed or the way that you
Mhm.
process things individually may just make it more challenging, and doesn't mean that there can't be progress, that you can't even just to notice. And like if it were me and I was in a slump of depression, where I would probably sit is, can I be present in the moment? Can I notice my feelings, and can I not
Mhm.
judge them? Just those 3 things.
Right.
And if you can get just to that, that's great. And that might take a while to not judge
Mhm.
it, because you might go, okay, how do I not judge it? Well, I feel this way about it. I'm mad about it. I don't want to be depressed. I want energy. I want to move. I
Mhm.
want to have fun. I want to enjoy my life. And why can't I? And then you can say, wow, okay, well, that sounds like frustration, right?
Right.
So maybe there's, again, that's the sad bucket, right? And then maybe there's some mad coming into that bucket. So there all of a
Right.
sudden you're noticing the complexity. So, I think it's just you have more challenges when you're in a state of depression, or even if it's lifelong. And, I think
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily probably be qualified to speak to a whole bunch of other types of neurodivergence, but I just know that it's just more challenging.
Well, even outside of quote unquote qualification, you have been coaching a neurodivergent professional.
Multiple.
I think she'd be fine for us
Yeah.
to say that she is on the autism spectrum,
Yes.
and there are interesting nuances and details about people who are on the spectrum and how they
Mhm.
process emotion.
I can talk about that. Yeah, I don't think she'd mind at all. Hi, Allison, if you're out there. Um, Autism. So Minds of Light, I'll give a shout out to the Minds
Mhm.
of Light nonprofit organization to support adults on the autism spectrum. Um, Autism is treated and well supported through adulthood, but when you hit that 18 or 22 years old, it's a big cliff and there isn't a lot. So Allison's trying to fill that gap. Um, Working with her as an autistic or an individual on the autism spectrum is the best way to say that.
Mhm.
Um, she has meltdowns. She has days where she just wants to throw her hands up and quit. She has a hard time, and that gets in the way, and then it gets her frustrated, and then it kind of gets into this cycle. So just the way that I've coached her is just getting to know herself a little bit better, and starting with just the simple core values, like, here's a list of all the values that are out there in the world. Which ones do you resonate with
Mhm.
most? Which ones, when you look at the world and you think it should operate a certain way, which core values are the ones that you think, oh, if somebody doesn't operate that way, then there's something wrong with them. And that's how you can know when you're going to get triggered, so that I'm giving her the tools to identify situations or individuals that conflict with her core values, and know that that's a concrete way to know that she knows why she's triggered and she knows how she got there.
Certainly.
And it's been a game changer for her. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, and over the years of my life, I have several friends that have been diagnosed with ADHD, and that's another type of neurodivergence. And sometimes it can feel like the people working through those types of conditions could be inattentive or distracted. And it's not that they intend to be, it's not that they don't value the connection between us. It's just they're wired a little differently, and it's okay to
Yeah,
be
and they
different.
probably feel terrible about it. That's when I work with people who are ADHD, and the ones who are more severe typically are frustrated with themselves because they can't pay attention, or because if they're a certain type of ADHD that I've had somebody just describe it to me as like, I'll sit on the couch and I'll just sit there and stare because I have no external stimulation to know what to do or what to think or how
Mhm.
to feel.
Mhm.
And I'm like, wow, wow. And then, I've known people that get to a level of acceptance with that. And they're like, okay, well, so now I know I need to either build some structure around my day or adapt this way, or have a certain type of medication or a certain type of therapy that can help with those situations. But yeah, again, it comes back to just more challenges,
Certainly.
but it's a doable thing.
Well, and even for somebody that isn't experiencing any particular kind of diagnosed neurodivergence, trauma plays a role in this as well. And really, I don't know of anybody who doesn't get to adulthood and a committed relationship or raising children or any number of things that doesn't have some sort of traumatic event in their life. It seems like that's just part of being an adult to some degree.
Oh,
Unfortunately, there are definitely some people that have had severe traumatic experiences, and some of us have more mildly traumatic experiences. I don't there's no judgment there in all of that. It's just that some of us go through a lot more challenges than others. And those
yeah.
traumatic challenges definitely impact how we're able to process emotion.
It makes me think, though, not everyone is aware of their trauma. And so that can be quite scary.
Mhm.
If you're feeling resistance towards mindfulness, if you're feeling resistance towards meditation, towards non judgment, towards these types of things we're talking about, you may have trauma in your past that you're simply not aware of.
Mhm.
But those traumas will be kind of those inner voices that you're like from early childhood. Like, there's so much research on this. There's a lot of
Right.
research on this, just like how your parents talk to you,
Mhm.
or if they criticize you a lot, or if they're super supportive, that tends to become our inner voice. So even if you're parenting as a young age, contained something that for you doesn't mean that your parent was a bad parent or that
Mhm.
they were doing anything wrong, but for your particular personality type, it caused trauma, and you may end up with this kind of the negative self-talk voice or something that's happening in your mind. Um, and it can make diving into the realm of becoming aware of your emotions and exploring that really scary,
Mhm.
because you could end up uncovering trauma that you didn't know existed. So just a public service announcement, make sure you've got a good therapist if you don't have
Yep.
one. BetterHelp, there's a lot of resources out there where you can find support. We all need it,
Mhm.
so don't hesitate.
Well, and once you've for a lot of people, experiencing some kind of trauma kind of sets you on edge to where you're constantly looking out for the next experience of it and trying to preemptively protect yourself from experiencing that again, which then triggers all kinds of weird controlling behaviors where you're trying to not only control yourself, but possibly control others around you in order to
Mhm.
prevent another traumatic experience. And so it can impact how open you are to experiences and people around you as well.
Mhm. So if you're feeling kinda judgy about all this, there might be some unresolved trauma, but it does, it impacts it impacts everything. Sorry, I giggle because I'm find a lot of humor and joy in a lot of things.
Yes.
But, it impacts how you talk to yourself, it impacts your willingness or ability or desire to experience your emotions, and it changes the structure of your
It
brain.
does.
It really does. So it's not easy. So don't judge yourself too harshly
Mhm.
if you're judging this. Let's get a little more meta.
So as we wrap up, is there any closing remarks you want to make about experiencing that emotional awareness so that we can start to take those steps and develop skills?
Do it. You know, I think it's a lifelong journey, and I think if you wanted to, uh, motivate yourself to kinda go down this path, I would say to think about what it feels like to be curious,
Mhm.
um, and get that way about yourself and your own emotions, just curiosity, and that will get you started off on the right path.
All right. Tina Schweiger, thank you so much for another great conversation.
Michelle Stinson Ross, thank you. Amazing.
All
My pleasure as usual.
right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great day.
Have a great weekend too. Bye.